Hey everyone. Okay, today my story is around a meltdown that I dealt with, and I'm actually a little bit proud of how I navigated through it with my youngest just recently before bedtime. It felt like it lasted forever, but I'm pretty sure it was about 15 minutes. And if you guys have heard any of the previous episodes, or if you have followed me on any of the social media channels, you'll know that I am not a perfect parent. And sometimes I lose my cool, but I'm actually quite proud of. And this is why I want to tell the story, because it shows the way in which I was able to respond when she was having these big explosive emotions that, like, a few years ago I would have met her where she was at and exploded right back at her, but I didn't. And I was able to keep my cool. I was able to hold space for her. And it was pretty loud. Like, there was a lot of stuff happening. And she was very unhappy about something. But I was actually able to let her release the emotions safely. I held my boundaries, and we were able to get on with the evening routine within, probably like 20-30 minutes later. We were kind of brushing teeth and putting pajamas on and then things like that. So when I have these moments, yes, my brain goes to, ooh, I want to talk about this. Ooh, I think this would be really helpful. Because for the most part, this stuff is mostly second nature in that I'm talking about it, reading about it, writing about it, speaking about it, and how to deal with kids' emotions in an emotionally intelligent way. Having said that, I still have my human moments, but it is so much easier now because when I have the foundation of emotional intelligence, I get what is happening inside myself in those moments. I get what is happening inside my kids or my husband, and I'm coming from a much more grounded, confident, calm, what's that word? Like place of conviction. Like, I'm good, I got this, we can get through it together. Which is why I'm telling the story today. Anyway, so welcome to the Emotionally Intelligent Parenting Podcast. I'm Stephanie Pinto. I'm the host. I'm a mum of 2 and a wife to 1. And I'm also a best-selling author, an international speaker, and an award-winning coach, all in the space of emotional intelligence. So I love all this stuff. I'm really glad you're here today because I think you'll get a lot out of this story. And I just want to share, how I handle things when things go well. Again, it's not all the time, but I think it just shows us what's possible, right? It can be possible in your home as well. So just before we begin, I want to acknowledge the Darug Nation, who are the traditional custodians of the land on which I live, work, and record this podcast. I pay my respects to all First Nations people, their elders and ancestors, and I acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded, and I stand in solidarity towards a shared future. Okay guys, let's jump straight into the episode. Hope you enjoy. Actually, also just before we begin, my kids are around and the neighbors' kids are around, so I'm just kind of putting in a disclaimer now. If you hear some little voices or some big voices, I'm going to try my best to just push on through. I do not want to have to edit this if I don't have to. I'm going to cross my fingers and we'll see how we go. Okay, now let's jump in. So as part of my work as an emotional intelligence speaker and author and consultant, I will often talk on conferences, be it virtual conferences online, where I'm sitting here in my office talking, to my laptop, or I will do face-to-face in-person conferences where it's at a conference center or a hall or an event place and, speak to people about emotional intelligence as part of a conference. So recently I traveled to Auckland in New Zealand and spoke at a conference there. It's actually the ADHD conference, and they travel all around Australia and now New Zealand, running this one-day conference for parents and educators, obviously to learn and get support around raising or working with ADHD kids. So they booked me to speak, obviously, on emotional intelligence and how that kind of interplays with ADHD and the challenges that a lot of parents face raising an ADHD kiddo. And so this isn't anything new to me in terms of speaking, on stage in front of a lot of people. It would have been a few years ago. And some of you guys, if you followed my story, it would have been really, really nerve-wracking and basically scary, and I would have said no. Anyway, but fast forward to now, the last couple of years I've been doing it more and more. So I have been traveling every few months, and my kids are getting used to me being away for short periods of time. Like usually it's no more than a week, and sometimes it's just for a couple of days. Anyway, so recently I went to Auckland, as I said, and spoke at an ADHD conference. And it was the actual time I was going to be away was kind of like 3.5 to 4 days. It was like 4 days really. But if you take out travel, I was only really there for like 2.5 days, which sucks, but that's how it is. And so what I do to help my kids prepare is I actually do not tell them like months out, because number one, they're going to forget. Number two, it's kind of pointless. Number three, things might change. And also number four, particularly for my youngest, I don't want to like build up this anticipation of like how long till you're going and I won't be okay and I don't want you to go kind of thing. So in the past, probably 1.5 or 2 years ago, she had bouts of separation anxiety, which was nothing big, but it was still there. So that's always been in the back of my mind, that she is a little bit more sensitive and needs a bit more support than our oldest. So I had told them, a few weeks before, probably 3 or so weeks before, I want to say. And I just told them that, I was going for a conference and I'd be going away for a couple of days kind of thing. So I made sure that I reminded them both, just like in passing and in conversation, and when I had to like get my books together, I take books across so I can sell them to people between speakers at the conference. There's usually like an expo that is just in the kind of foyer of these conferences, and I'm able to sell my book From Chaos to Connection. So, I had reminded them and told them, oh, it's coming up, or a few weeks, that kind of thing. During the week, like the week leading up to, I also mentioned that I would be going away, and Pa, that's my dad, Pa would be picking up me and Granny from home and taking us to the airport, because my mum went with me, which was really, really cool, but that's a story for another day. My mum is amazing, and it was a great little trip for us. So everything was okay until here's where the story gets interesting. And here's where I think it just is such a reminder to me, and I have to tell these stories because now, for the most part, it's like my everyday life, and it's almost like the norm. But I know that for a lot of families it isn't, and these big emotionally charged moments are really, really stressful. So I'm going to tell you the story. So the night before, my daughter and I were on the couch, just kind of, I think, hanging out, and the TV was on. And I had said to her, I think she wanted me to play something or watch something. And I said, oh no, I've got to get some stuff and put it in my suitcase. And she asked where I was going, because I said, obviously it was like I'm going the next day kind of thing. And she asked where I was going, and I had the, now in hindsight, somewhat stupid idea of showing her on the map, like on Google Maps, where I was going. Which I thought at the time, so my general approach and my theory is that if we give kids enough information and we help them to see what's happening, where it is, who's going to be there, how long we're going, if we give them information, they're able to better form a realistic or accurate picture of what to expect in that new or different situation, if that makes sense. So I used that logic and I thought, let me show you. And I pulled up on my phone where we are in Sydney, Australia. And then I zoomed out a little bit with my fingers, like zip, zip, zip. And I then showed her across the Tasman Sea, New Zealand. And I said, that's where I'm going. So it's very close. It's closer than I've been before. I went to, where did I go? I went to California earlier this year to speak. So that's a huge, plane trip. I've been to the Caribbean to speak at a parenting conference, even further. So I was like, this is tiny in comparison to, where it could be. Anyway, cue like the explosion of emotion, because now what I realized, she realized it was a plane flight away, which is huge, massive in her eyes. I was like, oh, it's no big deal. Like, it's literally one of the shortest flights. It's 3 hours from Sydney to Auckland. Oh my goodness. She lost it. Huge meltdown. Like, she was yelling. I was right next to her on the couch. Like, we were buddied up, like cuddling basically. She was yelling to the point where my husband from down the back of the house was like, Steph, what's going on? And I was like, we're just having a moment. Like, oh my God. I was like, part of me, I still get these moments. They're few and far between compared to before, years ago. But like, I still get this moment where I'm like shocked and I'm like, oh my God, I did not see that happening. Like, I thought that was fine. I thought this would be okay. I thought you would be all right with it. Do you know what I mean? So I still have these moments. I should not be embarrassed to say, because I am human and my kids are, unpredictable, as we all are. And so I had that moment and I was like, whoa. She was like, you're not going. I'll never let you go. Cancel the trip. Put away your suitcase. Like, anything and everything that she could just like let out and release, that was all coming out. The gist of it was, you're not going. And I was like, I kind of am. Like, I didn't say that, but I was like, there is no way that I can like spin this or reframe it or like change the situation. Sometimes I'm like, okay, how can I, if it's school and maybe dad's dropping her off and she wants me, maybe I can push back, or maybe I have extra time to push back a call or a meeting or some work and I can take you. Or, we want these, I really want this cookie or something, we've run out, but you could have a biscuit instead. I don't know. Do you know what I mean? Usually I have ways where I can problem solve and I can work to negotiate and find some mutually beneficial solutions to a problem. Not this time. Like, I just had to go. There was no cancelling. Obviously no cancelling. I'm not going to let down a whole, organization that's put together this conference and booked me. And yeah, I had to pack. I was like, I am not doing it at 4 a.m. in the morning. Like, I'm not getting up extra early to pack and, not doing any more packing. I was like, I need to get it done tonight. And yeah. So she was super unhappy. And there is, like, I want you guys to know, there is still a part of me. I think it's maybe the very human part and the very, like, that was my old blueprint part that still experiences her big emotions, the sadness, the anger, the hurt or the grief, I don't know, like all of that I experience that as really triggering, and it pulls on my heartstrings like you do not understand. It's really hard for me to sit there. Plus I'm probably what a lot of people call an empath. Like, I sense people's emotions, especially obviously my kids, but like I really feel it when they're upset or when they're hurt or when they're angry. Like, it's visceral for me. So obviously now I've got to the point where I can hold my own and have that like separation of my emotions and my kids' emotions, but it's still really hard. Especially when this giant ball of emotion and like the volume is sitting like right next to me. So, yeah, she was yelling. She was like, no, you're not going. And I was like, yeah, I gotta go. Like, I had enough of like the presence of mind to know or to remember, that giving her lots of reasons and using the logic was going to be at best unhelpful and at worst adding fuel to the fire. Because I could have said things like, this is important work, I'm not cancelling it, this has been booked for months, there's no way I'm letting these people down, work is important and I go every few months and I'm here most of the time. All these people that I would be letting down versus just you missing me, for a weekend. Like, I could have even said, you know what, I've been away for longer periods and me and Daddy, we went to the Caribbean. I took him with me, which was awesome. We had a nice holiday when I spoke in Aruba at the conference. So I could have like thrown all of that at her in an attempt to pull her out of those emotions, and to almost help her see the rational, logical side of things, that I don't need to be upset because I've gone through this before and I was okay, and it's actually a short time compared to what mum's done before. You know what I mean? You get the picture, right? So I am not saying that I didn't say any of that. That I did say some of that logical, like we had a discussion about it later, but in the moment I had to stop myself from like using all of that logic to try and pull her out of the emotion. I just had to sit there, and yes, like it was easier to begin with after the shock, happened. I was like, whoa, did not expect that. It was harder as time went on because, again, yelling, she was like digging her heels in, and she was not letting it go, kind of thing. And the tears in her tiny little eyes, like, oh, it's so close to your heart when your kids are really upset. I don't know if it's just me. And I think in hindsight, I've thought about it, it probably only lasted 15, maybe 20 minutes, I think 15 minutes. So it doesn't sound like a long period of time, but when a child is like really, really dysregulated, loud, like the tears, I had to grab tissues for her nose, like it was that level. And it's right next to me, and I couldn't deflect or dismiss or deny or minimize. I couldn't do any of that, and I didn't want to do any of that. It was a lot to take. So obviously after I had to I had to kind of regulate myself a little bit after it had passed. But the main thing that I guess I did was I just did my absolute best to hold space for her emotions to come out, because they need to be released, right? Emotions, we often, in the emotional intelligence world, we talk about emotions being emotions, energy in motion. Like you look at your child and they are a ball of energy, like the cortisol, the adrenaline, flooding their system. You can see it all over their body, all over their face. Like there's so much happening. And for me to try and contain that with a threat or a punishment, like I would just be adding fuel to the fire. I'd be making things 10 times worse. So I did my best to hold space. I did I obviously shifted my body language. I kind of tried to communicate, like, I know, I get it, and I know you're really upset, and that's okay. Do you want a hug? Like, I just tried to allow the space and the time for her to release it, because inevitably, sometimes it's shorter, sometimes it's longer, but inevitably, it always, like, it runs out of gas, like the wave crashes. You know what I mean? So I had to remind myself, like, just wait for that time. It will come. And then meanwhile, my husband's like, what's going on? I'm like, it's all right. We're just having a moment. So she still keeps me on my toes. I love it sometimes. But yeah, I had to really give her the time. I had to trust as well. I think this is a good lesson for all of us. You've got to trust that no matter how big it seems in the moment and how never-ending it can feel, like, God, they're going on and on about it and they won't give up and they keep pushing the button, or like, you know what I mean? No matter how stressful it is in that moment, it will always end. You know that saying, this too shall pass? Oof, it's actually really, really true. And the more that we can hold space for and allow the emotion, different to allowing, disruptive or hurtful behavior. Like if she started hitting me, that would have been a different story. I would have stopped her from hitting. I would have grabbed a cushion. I would have blocked her carefully, compassionately. I would have taken steps for that. But the more that we can allow the emotion to come out, it's almost like you're draining, like you're draining gas out of a tank or something. Like at some point it's going to empty out. Right? If you think about all the times that your kids have ever had a huge emotional reaction to something and you're like, what the heck? Like, just get over it. Like, what? No matter what, it's always come to an end, right? So trusting in that, and trusting that, this is the other part of it, trusting that when she has calmed, when she eventually settles and she runs out of gas, which is what did happen, I was then able to engage that logical prefrontal part of her brain where we can have a good discussion, where I can remind her of other times that I've been away, where we can plan how to make it fun with dad and her brother whilst I'm gone. Then I can do this rationalizing. I wouldn't like lay it on thick and just do all this. I wouldn't like bombard her. Plus, you got to consider the time of day. Like, it was the evening before, she'd had a meltdown. Like, kids and adults, actually, after we've had a big emotional reaction or expression, like, that is draining. It takes time for us to kind of, truly settle our nervous system so that we're back in balance. I hope that makes sense. And actually brushing her teeth was like a drama. Finding her pajamas was a big problem. Just everything was that much harder following that emotional meltdown. And that is not putting it on. That's not her milking it. That's not her like twisting me around her thumb. What's that saying? Like, when people think, oh, she's got you around her finger. That's it. That is not what's going on. If you think about a time that you've had a huge emotional, like an upset or an argument, with a partner or your spouse, like, you do not snap back. Like, you couldn't write a report for work and it be 100% perfectly accurate and tip-top shape. You know what I mean? We take time. Our brain, our nervous system takes time to get back on track and to be regulated. So that evening, even though I was drained and she was drained and we talked about it and things like that, even then I had to like muster up as much as I could of my energy and hold on to what I had left of my nervous system to help her and be more hands-on with brushing her teeth and getting in pajamas and tucking her in. I think I even like sat with her until she fell asleep. I can't remember, but like that stuff, like that's what she needed in that moment, on that day, in that context for her nervous system. Like, she's individual. My son, different story. But I think it's really important, like a couple of the takeaways from that story are that we have to allow that emotional expression when it comes. We've got to allow like time and space for it to come out safely. The other thing is, I think we have to, as much as we can, remove our judgments from the situation with like why she should be able to handle this, why this is not the first time it's happened, so it's not news to her, or she's being ridiculous or dramatic, or your brother's not like that. You know what I mean? We have to remove all that because none of that is helpful. If you think about it, 0 of those judgments is productive or pulls me into a more compassionate parenting approach. It pushes me into the punitive, coercive, like, I'm going to use a threat or a bribe or a punishment because I want you to stop this behavior, basically. I think that the other kind of takeaway is, if we can allow the space and give ourselves whatever we need, if not during, then I think after the meltdown or the argument, whatever has happened, if we can give ourselves time to regulate our own nervous system, that is really, really powerful. And I think, if you're doing it in the space of your kids and they're around and you're modeling to them, whoa, that was huge. I'm going to go make a cup of tea. I need to go chill on the couch. That took it all out of me. Come on, let's go relax together. That is really helpful. But if they're not there, like, my daughter went to bed, I went into my room, finished packing, when there's not space for that, then at least doing it for yourself so that you're not having like this constant accumulation of stress in your nervous system and cortisol, right? So I just think sometimes there's a few kind of lessons and reminders in there for me as well, because I'm still only a 10-year-old parent, right? My son is 10, my daughter's 7, so I'm still figuring this out. I'm still learning. I really love going by the research and knowing what the science says about best practice for parenting and dealing with big emotional meltdowns and things like that. But I think part of me still thinks if we come back to our intuitive space as parents, intuitive space as people, if I was having my quote unquote adult meltdown about this thing that happened in work that didn't, the project that fell through, and I was so upset or disappointed or whatever, I would want my husband to, what? I wouldn't want him to threaten me. I wouldn't want him to dismiss or deny or minimize or make light of. It's not a big deal. You've got so many other things going on. Don't worry about it. Like, just move on. Don't waste time on it. I would want him to be compassionate and to give me space to vent why I'm so upset. I would want empathy. I would want him to get it and feel it and to understand it. And I want him to listen, right? And to take it on board and to be affected by it like I am. I don't want to feel like he's up here and I'm down here struggling with this silly little problem. I'm like, no, I want you in this with me. So that's what I sometimes come back to with my kids. They all just want to feel seen and heard and important and like they matter and like what they're going through is real, right? And that we see it. So a few lessons from that story. I got off to the airport okay the next day. That was fine. It was so early that the kids were in bed, but my husband said, oh, they were fine. They woke up, they went to school. And then they had the weekend, which was great. I'm sure they had lots of fun because I wasn't here. But yeah, it was just a reminder, another learning curve for me, because in that 15 minutes, I was like, oh God, what else can I do? And I thought, no, just let it come out. Hold the space, keep her safe, which she was, and don't hold it against them. I think that's the last thing. Don't hold a grudge. Don't think, I'm not going to tuck you in now because you just yelled at me for 15 minutes, or no, I'm not going to help you brush your teeth. You were just so rude. Please, please, please don't do that. As much as possible, get rid of that old thinking. They're old paradigms. They're old beliefs that when a child can't handle their emotions and they lose it and they flip their lid and they are, what I would call unconscious, right? They're acting out of fear or anger or a big emotion. They're not doing that intentionally. Oh my goodness. So, and we know that they're not wired yet to be able to handle big emotions maturely. So don't hold it against them. I do my best not to hold it against my kids. Like, I will help them straight after, or I will make them some food, or I will sit with them and play with them, because I know that, it feels awful when you're that emotionally charged and drained and overwhelmed, and I don't want someone punishing me for it. Okay, I hope you guys took away something from that story. I would love to hear if you found it interesting, or if you have any other thoughts or any other questions about it. Sometimes parents say, well, what would you have done if your daughter was hitting or kicking, or I don't know, some other kind of hurtful behaviors. So ask me questions like that. I would love to still hear questions that I can answer on the podcast, as well as having guests on, and as well as just doing kind of solo episodes like this. So I want to say thank you guys. I mentioned my book that somewhere in the episode, I think. I was signing copies at the conference, and I have a stack here, usually in my office, if people want a signed copy, but it's also on Amazon. So if you just look up From Chaos to Connection by Stephanie Pinto, then you'll find it, and it will deliver to your house. And if you're in a place where it doesn't deliver, you can reach out to me and I can post it to you, because I just did post a couple of copies to South Africa and to Pakistan, and they reached there. So that is exciting. Okay, thank you guys. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in the next episode.